So loser thing doesn't mean you're dumb, doesn't mean you're ignorant in the classic sense. Loser thing means you haven't been exposed to a domain of thought, and it happens to be the one you need for this problem. CNN's got a piece that's interesting, but is a perfect example of what I call loserthink, which I'll explain in a moment. And what they've done is they're comparing stock market performance by president. So they're saying for the first X days of each presidency, how did the stock market do? And they've determined that Obama's stock market went up a higher percentage, sharply higher percentage, than Trump's has so far, which has also been good. And so the conclusion from the CNN graph is that Trump is doing better than, I guess, Bush, but way worse than Obama, and not too bad compared to Clinton, I guess, similar. So is that a good analysis? Let's say all the numbers are correct. Let's say they got all the numbers correct. Is that a good analysis? Here's the problem. And here's the theory behind my upcoming book. It'll be out in November, called Loserthink. And the background idea is that people who don't have experience across multiple domains are at a disadvantage, and that they'll have blind spots for things which are obvious to someone who's spent time in, let's say, the field of law, to someone who's spent time in the field of, let's say, art, if you haven't had any experience there. Someone who's had experience in economics, someone who's experienced in business. Each of these experiences gives you a different filter on life. And my take is that the more of those filters you can combine into your maximum filter, the more likely you are to escape what I call loserthink. So loserthink doesn't mean you're dumb, doesn't mean you're ignorant in the classic sense. Loserthink means you haven't been exposed to a domain of thought, and it happens to be the one you need for this problem. Perfect example. Do you think that the people who made this graph for CNN and the editors who decided to put it were aware of the following economic truth? You ready? I have a degree in economics. I've got an MBA, worked in business for a long time, specifically had the job of making charts and graphs and financial projections. So unlike perhaps the editors of CNN, I don't know for sure because I don't know who they are, but there's a blind spot on this graph, and it's gigantic. And it's one that everybody who studied economics and finance and business can see immediately. Yeah, somebody in the comments is already all over it. Now, you're saying it differently. You're talking about QE1. What I was going to say is that you should expect in all cases, this is just a general truth, that if your economy is at the bottom of the barrel, the percentage of increase that you're likely to have during the first parts of recovery are going to be really high. Why? Because that's the easy part. If you recover at all, which takes some skill, and by the way, I do credit Obama with skillfully stopping the economy from going further down, adding some confidence to the system, stabilizing it so that it could do its thing to grow back up. Here's the thing. The percentages increases you get in the beginning of a recovery should be high. That's how it works. Because you've got companies that are already built. You've got factories already built. They just have to make more stuff because the economy is improving. You got people who are fully trained, ready to go back to work. So they do. You're ready to go from the bottom of the economic hole. But when you get closer to the top, which is where Trump was, getting any kind of percentage gain is really, really hard. These two are not comparable. You can't compare coming off the bottom with trying to top off the top, which is what Trump is doing, much harder. And I would argue it takes a different skill set. I've said this before. Obama, for all you might dislike about his policies in general, because he was a stable, kind of serious, non-whimsical kind of a personality. He felt like a dependable, pair of shoes that you needed to give some confidence to the system, and he poured some money into it, etc. So he made the right moves, but he was also the right personality. Imagine President Trump in Obama's job. Would you want somebody as, let's say, unpredictable as Trump when things are already scary? Maybe not. Maybe not. But when you start getting, toward the top of how well an economy can do, how about that? That is exactly when you want a President Trump, because he's the one, putting the gas on the fire. He's the one who can goose anything. Trump can bring energy to anything. He could bring energy to a nuclear bomb. He could say, well, let's make it a little more energetic. So the two presidents have completely different skill sets, but in my opinion, they were both well suited for their time and the occasion. So does CNN know that anybody who had any experience with finance and economics would recognize that they're comparing the stock performances against different presidents would be complete nonsense? Do they know that? Well, maybe some of them do. Obviously, the people covering the economic part of CNN know that cold, right? So for sure, everybody who's a pundit at CNN who has a background in economics and finance knows that. That's just basic. But if you had a degree in journalism, would that be obvious to you? Would it? If you didn't know that, what I just described to you, about coming off the bottom versus trying to top off a good economy, if you didn't know that, you're not stupid, right? It's just a field that you haven't had experience, and you're not ignorant in some kind of classic way where you didn't read enough books or something. No, it's just a field of study that you did not spend time in. There's nothing wrong with you, all right? You're completely healthy, and you're a good person, but you haven't had experience in that field. So that's what Loserthink is about. It's not being dumb. It's not being ignorant. It's about blind spots because you didn't spend enough time in a field. All right. Similarly, the economic models around climate change. When I look at the economic models around climate change, I'm pretty sure I say what something like 100% of people who have studied economics and done economic models and made economic forecasts say. This is a big claim, but I'm going to stick by it. My big claim is anybody who has an economics degree, finance degree, who has spent time in that world projecting economic things in the future, every one of them thinks that the economic projections about what bad things will come out of climate change are ridiculous guesses. All of them. Now, I'm not talking about the science part. The science part that says the temperature will go up by this amount. I have no visibility into that world. I see claims. I can count the number of people who say it, but I don't know if it's true or false. I'm inclined to go with the majority of scientists because I'm always inclined to do that. But I can't say it's true. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not if they are saying the economic impact is as low as they're saying it is. The official climate change economic forecast is something like a 10% hit to GDP over 70 years, which would literally be not noticeable. That's the official number. But here's the thing. Can you depend on that? No. A 70-year economic forecast? Nonsense. Anybody who has experience with economics will say, oh, that's just crazy nonsense. That's nothing you should use to make decisions.